3 of Unit 3. And in this session, we'll be looking at class management and control. My name is Patrick Eje. Now, at the end of this session, you should be able to state the characteristics of a well-managed classroom. Identify the causes of student misbehavior during a physics class and suggest solutions to the identified student misbehavior in a class. Now let's look at class management. And as a teacher, you must know that in your instructional planning, you should also include in it strategies that will create a conducive learning environment for your learners. So you must include this anytime you are planning your lessons, that your lessons will be offered or will occur in a classroom that is more conducive for learning to occur. And some guidelines that you as a teacher you can follow for effective class management include: establish and implement workable rules of student behavior. So as a teacher, you must state clearly the do's and don'ts in the classroom and make sure you implement them. It is very important. When you establish the rules and you don't implement them, the students are going to take you for granted. And so try as much as possible that as you establish these rules, you should try as much as possible to also implement them. And give clear instructions or directions. So example, during laboratory work or class activity, make sure that you give your learners as clear as possible instructions that they must follow. And deal quickly with inappropriate student behavior. So when a student misbehaves, and if it is a punishment that you may want to, ensure that the time, the moment in which the learner shows that inappropriate behavior, the associated punishment must be meted out to the student. And as a teacher, you should be well organized and pace your lesson so that activities can flow smoothly from one to the other with minimum loss of time on task. So it's very important that there is that smooth flow anytime you are delivering your lesson in the classroom. And constantly monitor your students' work in class. So anytime you give work for students to do, you should be moving through to find out what exactly your students are doing. And ensure students present assignments promptly. So you give them a take home and you gave them a time that tomorrow by 8 a.m. all books should reach my desk. Ensure that by 8 a.m. every student submits his or her work. It is very important. If you schedule a time and you are not following the time, know that students always want to test these rules. And so when they are testing and they find out that, oh, sir or madam only established these rules, but then the rules are not even being implemented, they will continue misbehaving in the classroom. And discourage students from giving chorus answers. So, in as much as you, the teacher, tries to give out questions that will encourage students giving chorus answers, when you give or you ask questions that does not demand chorus answers, and students to give chorus answers, you must discourage that. Don't accept such answers from your students. And there are times a student may ask or answer a question. Now make sure that a student who asks or answers a question has raised his or her hand, and you, the teacher, have permitted the student to answer the question or ask his or her question. And organize students in groups if necessary for demonstrations, for viewing things in and out of class, and for using adequate teaching learning resources. There are some teaching learning resources that they may not be many so that all learners can have access to. You can let your learners come and have a view of it in groups. It really helps. And also check noise in or outside the classroom. And also you must check the lighting system as well as ventilation in your classroom. Now, what are the causes of student misbehavior in the classroom? Now, understand that every student misbehavior in your class has a cause. And so as the teacher, your responsibility is to find out the basic reason for the misbehavior of students before you apply measures to correct it. And some causes of students' misbehavior include teacher-related causes, administrator-related causes. We have students' home background and environment, as well as student-related causes. Now let us look at how a teacher is able to cause student misbehavior, how administrator, students' home environment, and students causing their own misbehavior. So teacher-related causes. And there are teachers in class, sometimes the way we present issues, the kind of things we will say in class are sometimes likely to bring about students' misbehavior. And examples of such statements or comments include making sarcastic remarks, making remarks that students may not like, sometimes to singling out one student to make an example out of him. You realize that if the student is not happy about that, then you should be ready to note that such students are going to misbehave in your classroom. There are some students, the moment you start singling them out, know that these are our students normally, they are friends who support their misbehavior. And so once you try to single such students out, you realize that the other colleagues who support such a misbehavior will even start making noise and start shouting in the classroom. And also treating one student differently from another. So you have established a rule and there is a punishment for that rule. But a particular student will break that rule and you treat such a student differently. Now note that students are observing, and when a different student should also break that rule and you want to now apply the measures, they are going to try as much as possible to let you know that when student A did this same thing, you did not say anything or do anything. But when student B does the same thing, you want to punish that student. And also ridiculing or attacking a student's character or dignity, and trying to be humorous at the wrong time, failing to start a class on time. It is time for you to start class. There are some teachers, they will always go to class 20 minutes after their time, and they will leave 20 minutes before their time. So for every 1 hour lesson, they only teach for 20 minutes. Anytime you are doing this, know that you are encouraging students' misbehavior in your class. And boring students with irrelevant matters. When sometimes you are discussing issues not related to what you are talking or what you are teaching in the class, you realize that students find these issues boring and it becomes irritating to them. Now, what of administrator-related causes? Now, note that some student misbehaviors are caused by the school administration or environment. So, for example, students are not likely to misbehave at a school where we have firm, consistent enforcement of rules and regulations. But when we are in schools where administrators produce unrealistic rules and regulations, these rules are likely to encourage students' misbehavior. There are some students, they may want to break these rules because they find out that these rules are not realistic to go by, and so they will try as much as possible to defy these rules to see whether the associated punishment can be meted out to them. And so some administrator-related causes of student misbehavior are harsh penalties for minor infractions, frequent schedule change that disrupt classes. So within the shortest possible time, assembly. Within the shortest possible time, we are going here. All these encourage students' misbehavior. And inability to also instill discipline in the school will also lead to students' misbehavior. Now let's look at student home background and the environment. And students are products of their home environment when they enroll in school. So whenever students come to school, the community in which they live, their environment in which they found themselves has some bearing on their character, and they try to portray these characters when they come to school. And so they are more likely to behave in the same ways they find themselves in their communities. And sometimes to parent-children relationships, the kind of relationships some parents have with their children in the home have a bearing on why certain students behave the way they do. There are some students, when they misbehave in their homes, They are even praised for the wrongdoing. And so when they come to school and they do same thing and you try to correct them, they see you as somebody who hates them because they have done the same thing in the house and they were praised. So why are you telling such a student that this thing is wrong? So this will also bring about student misbehavior. And sometimes through attitudes of parents towards school. There are instances some parents can just enter the school and they can just insult teachers. There are instances a teacher may punish a student and the parent of such a child will just go to the school and just move straight to the teacher. I don't know whether to beat the teacher or so. You realize that at the end of the day, students will now try to flout rules and regulations in the school. So these are some of the students' home backgrounds that also attribute or encourage their misbehavior in the school. And we also have student-related causes. And many students' misbehavior are caused due to their lack of maturity, self-control, their ability to use good judgment, lack of motivation, lack of security or self-esteem. You know, some students need attention, and so they know that it is when they misbehave that their names will be mentioned at morning assembly. When they misbehave, that they will be taken out of the class and their names are mentioned everywhere and for their colleagues to see them. And so they, in order to gain attention from colleagues, they try to misbehave. Now, what are the techniques for dealing with student misbehavior? And some of the techniques you can use to deal with such behavior include teacher self-control. As much as possible, you must try to have self-control as a teacher. Use of signals. Sometimes you can just stare at the misbehaving student in the class. You can just look at the person. If you are talking, you stop and you look at the person for some time. You can also do what we call proximity control. You move closer to the misbehaving student. You just stand closer to such a student. And you can also use humor. So you just make some funny comments in the class just for everybody and everybody to maybe laugh out of that comment. Then you bring all of them back on track. Then isolation. So when you find out that the student continues to misbehave, don't sack the student out of your class. You can let the student come and stand in front of the class so that he or she will continue to enjoy the lesson. And direct appeal. So sometimes you can just tell the student, there's 3 students at the far back. Can you keep quiet? Just sometimes you have to do this direct appeal because it really helps in dealing with students' misbehavior. And private conference. There are some students, when they misbehave in class, after class, you can just call them and have a one-on-one conversation with them. It will even help you to find out why such students always misbehave in the class. Now, students, in this session, we look at how to effectively manage a class and exercise class control. And as we bring the session to an end, let us take this question home. State 3 characteristics of a well-managed classroom environment and list 3 major factors which can contribute to student misbehavior.